So I'd now like to take the opportunity to introduce Taras Kulish, our newest senior associate at Mills Mills. Taras joined us in 2020. Taras was for many years the chair of the charitable and not-for-profit group at another mid-sized firm. We were very pleased when he joined us this year, and he has been extremely active, not just professionally, but personally in the not-for-profit sector. And he advises a wide range of charitable, faith-based, and other not-for-profit organizations. Taras is here to speak about governance issues, and he will be speaking particularly about good governance in bad times. So, Taras?
Hey, thank you very much, Richard. I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate everyone who has stayed on, and because it's your time is valuable, and we certainly appreciate having all of the different charities that are represented here. And so 2020 has certainly been quite a year. The big story is COVID, and who would have ever thought that even in January that this was going to happen? And so I'm going to share my screen and bring up my presentation. So I think you should be seeing my first slide. So I've called this presentation Good Governance in Bad Times. And, I think that's particularly appropriate now, but it's appropriate at any time in the life cycle of a charity. There can be bad times. It can be due to finances. It can be due to changes in boards. All kinds of things can make it that you have bad times. Certainly we're living through an unprecedented time in our lives. So as Richard said, I've had a lot of involvement with the charitable sector over the past 20 years. And I've served as a volunteer country director and chair of the board of a national organization that has connections internationally. And so I wanted to talk about the concept of good governance in bad times, but I wanted to share a little bit with you about some of my experience from the so-called trenches, which has helped me and has I think improved my understanding of the charitable sector and the problems, and then has there's quite an interplay when you're doing work as a volunteer for a charity, and then the types of legal problems that you see in your practice. So I wanted to I think a picture is worth 1,000 words, and this is a picture of a youth program that we had implemented with Hope Worldwide called Hope for Kids. And what had happened is that just only 3 years before this photo was taken, we had an incredible change in our structure, in our funding, and we because of this sort of cataclysmic change, and maybe some of the charities out there have gone through something like that, we had to go from an organization, first of all, that had a board, let's say, of about a dozen people. There was many who dropped off, and so we were down to 3 board members. I was one of them, and so that's when I took up the sort of the presidency of the board, and had to devote my time to rebuilding the board and programs. And so what we found was, it's going to be easier to bring along new board members when you don't just focus on recruiting board members, but you focus on programs. And so good programs like this that are reaching out to to kids and families. So one of my mantras is partnership, partnership, partnership. And so we were able to leverage existing partnerships with Toronto Community Housing, and we were also able to make new partnerships. The smiling lady in the center wearing the orange T-shirt is Peggy Nash, who was the MP of my riding where I live, and she was instrumental in helping us get into Toronto Community Housing and into the into various other sites around the city. And so, make use of the other people in your community who are there, who you can partner with. And so I'm a firm believer that that's part of good governance is having good programs and is making partnerships with different people who you're connected with. If you see there's one tall fellow, his name is Rowan Barrett. He's former captain of the Canadian Olympic basketball team, and he's got his hand on his son, who is now being drafted a few years later, and now plays with the New York Knicks. And we know that the lives of these kids were changed, but not only the lives of the kids, but the lives of the coaches. So good programs. Have those in sight. You'll be able to draw people to your board by having events that get them involved, get their hands dirty, get them involved in the community. There's been a number of people who started off as volunteers and then they joined the board afterwards because they were committed to the work that that was done, and that's certainly something that that you can do. For myself, I gained a lot of experience of international experience because the particular organization started to receive requests from members in Canada who were raising funds for countries where there were disasters, and such as Haiti after the earthquake, India after flooding, Philippines after tsunami, and Bangladesh after flooding. So we were able to sort of transition a little bit more into international programs, and that's where I was able to gain a tremendous amount of experience understanding from a board level, and then from a legal perspective as well. So I know that we've I don't want to spend too much time anymore on on this, but I think it's just true to say that if you build it, if you put those good programs in, then your board members are going to be charged up about what it is that you're doing. And really the thing is, oftentimes people will, you have a difference between an active board and a sort of a consultative board. I think that as much as possible, it's good to get your board members involved in the programs. And we've had the example with Motion Ball, and Benjamin Burford, who's with our group, who is a director, but he's also a team captain for Motion Ball with the Mills and Mills team. And so there's an interplay between what you do as a volunteer and what you do as a director. So if you can be involved in the programs, if you can get your people involved in the programs, and not just suggesting ideas or having oversight on the board, then you're going to have, I think, in my view, a very dynamic organization. So let's shift and talk about you know, this concept of good governance in bad times. And Abraham Lincoln is one of the my heroes when I was growing up. And here's a few quotes that I've sort of taken and can be applied to governance. So, when you reach the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. And how many people have felt like they're just hanging on in this 2020 time? And another thing he says is, be sure to put your feet in the right place and then stand firm. And I think that that governance is definitely putting your feet in the right place. So let's go through some tips. You know, one of the first things is membership. Respect your members. Members are the bedrock of your organization, and so you want to maintain, you know, proper communication with your members on a regular basis. And I think especially in these times, you know, maintain an up-to-date membership list. Let people know what it is that you're doing, and respond quickly to you know, to inquiries. And you know, we've seen in other organizations that there can be questions about how things are being done, and so that's where, you know, conducting fair and independently observed elections is important. Keeping people informed about, you know, financial statements. Those can be posted very easily on the website. And I think in this day and age, with, you know, the access that people have, you know, they can make requests to Corporations Canada, to the Charities Directorate. So why don't you, as an organization, post your financial statements on your website? In terms of, you know, governance, we want to, as much as possible, avoid splits on the board, avoid factions. And so, you know, how do we do that? You know, first of all, when you're onboarding directors, you want to make sure that people understand their fiduciary obligations. You know, so providing people with packages of information, providing proper notices of the meeting with agendas, and as well as an opportunity to add agenda items, so that you're not having a strict and rigid board meeting, but that there are you know, other items that can be added if things come up. Make sure that all your directors have access to, you know, financial and corporate information. When you're onboarding directors, you want to make it a policy to provide them with you know, with a package that includes, you know, the articles and the bylaws, so that everyone, they know what they're getting involved with. So these are some things that will help to avoid splits on the board. And then also, you know, acting collectively. There's a concept of consensus, you know, type voting. And so, you know, rather than immediately putting things to votes, you can have, you know, discussions where you find out the viewpoints and try to build consensus. It's not necessarily about what you believe, but it's what is best for the organization. And so again, when people understand, you know, that their obligation is towards the organization and figuring out what's best, and that's a little bit of the Switzerland model of not everyone is always happy in Switzerland for themselves with the decisions that are being made, but they make decisions for the country, for the best of the country, and we can do that for our organizations. The very important part about good governance is avoiding conflicts of interest. And so, you know, you want to make sure before you onboard directors, you know, and if you're having, you know, difficulties, you don't have the number of directors that you want, you still want to make sure that you're not compromising your principles and taking on a director who might be in a conflict of interest with your charity. They might have you know, a personal interest, and so you have to make sure that the interests of the charity are always going to be paramount. And you know, directors, of course, can't be in Ontario, can't be employed by the charity. There are provisions, you know, with the Ontario Public Guardian Trustee, and to make for exceptions to that. So that is possible, but these are the exceptions. It's important to make sure that your directors, you know, don't benefit in some way, you know, with contracts, leases, and things like that. There are always exceptions, and so those are things that we can discuss, because sometimes, you know, a director might have a corporation, and it might be the best thing. It might be in the charity's interest to do, let's say, business with. It could be a printing company or something like that. So these are things that have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Directors can also, you know, receive benefits that are offered to the public, but we do see, you know, there's the whole issue about the appearance or the appearance of conflict. And so oftentimes, even if a benefit is offered to the general public, we do see, you know, directors will refuse, you know, to accept something, and that can be a good practice, because it's this whole concept of, you know, the appearance of not having a conflict. So talked a little bit about, you know, finding, you know, new directors, filling out the board, and who do you look for? You want to have somebody who has, if possible, experience, you know, working with another charity, acting on the board level with another charity, somebody who has different management skills that you might need. It could be, you know, accounting, bookkeeping experience, fundraising abilities, or you just want people who have a certain, you know, dynamic, you know, ability and personality. Users of the charity services can be great, you know, sources of people on your board. And I think nowadays, you know, foremost, you want to have a diverse board. It's definitely balanced by gender, age, culture. And so if you're going to be balancing with age, you want to make sure you know, that you do have younger people on, and so they may not have all the experience, but they're going to learn. And the best way to learn is by, you know, putting them in charge of a project, and maybe teaming them up with somebody who's a little bit more seasoned. You want to, you know, have a standard process, a standard questionnaire, so that you're going to find out if, you know, people have to disclose if they've been a bankrupt, or if they've been convicted of an offense involving theft or dishonesty. So you do want to have a written process to make sure that you're getting the right people, and to determine if their interests coincide with the interests of the charity. I talked a little bit about, you know, the packages. So you want to provide guidance to directors when you're onboarding them, but also I think, you know, through the course of the year, and nowadays certainly, although we are in difficult times with the Zoom platform and other platforms, Google Meets, whatever, you're able to conduct, you know, trainings on Zoom. So you want to be able to, you know, at some point in time, you know, go over, you know, for instance, your bylaws, discuss what is, who are our members, what are the membership classes, how do we do things. So you want to be able to do that from time to time, and have, you know, committees of your board to go over things, not just put your bylaws in a drawer somewhere and file it away. And of course, directors should be advised even before they come on of specific challenges that are facing the charity. Yes, that might cause some people to hesitate, but I think it's very important to be honest and to disclose any issues, and then people are better armed to take on these problems. Sometimes this next point is become familiar with legislation. We may think that as a board member that that's not our responsibility, but it's a good practice to do so and to figure out, well, I have this question, I have this problem. So what is the law that governs my organization? Is my organization incorporated federally? Is it incorporated under the Ontario law? Is it unincorporated? Is it a religious organization? So, figure out what is the law, the framework that governs your organization, and then start to become familiar. You don't have to read, everything from start to finish in one go, but if you have, it's always good if you have a particular problem, then look up what does the Act say about that. Become informed, and then if you do need accounting or legal advice, then you're in a better position to seek that advice. And lastly, to wrap this up, I think it's so important to provide vision. And I think, and although he's not on the call, but we heard, about Motion Ball and Paul Etherington, and I think providing vision is definitely something that they've been able to do. And I like this quote from the author of The Little Prince, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who said, "If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea." So really providing people with that vision so that they get charged up and fired up, and hopefully they've been involved in your programs and rolled up their sleeves, and so they're able to impart that vision to other people. So thank you so much for sticking around and listening to this presentation. If there are questions, then very happy to entertain any questions. Over to you, Richard.
Thanks, Therese. That was excellent. Very good practical advice. Running a charitable organization, running a board is a difficult thing. You need everybody going in the same direction. And your point about orientation, about ensuring that new board members understand their roles and educating them at the very beginning, I think is invaluable, because once you have oriented, educated board members, hopefully they all are going to be rowing in the same direction. We had one question by chat, so let me just ask it. It was with respect to conflict of interest issues. It was more having to do with intra-board members. If there are two board members who are related, the questioner wondered, would that be a conflict of interest if they were related either by marriage or blood, and they were both board members?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when you're setting out the composition of your board, there are a couple of variables that you want to keep in mind. So if you have a board which is, for instance, only 3 people, and you have 2 of them where they're related, then yes, you have a lot more possibility of conflict. And so if you understand that, okay, well, we have 2 people who are related, and that happens quite often. It happened with myself and my wife on a board, and but if your board is 7, 10 people, then you're mitigating that risk of conflict.
Right. Okay. No, that so board composition obviously is always an important when you're recruiting, and that would be an additional factor. So thank